Some of the best character rosters came from the Sega All-Stars racing games, and I think it's about time that they made a third one. I'm predicting 30 characters for this roster, and stick around because you won't believe who I added in. First up, I'm just introducing your 5 staples. You got Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and of course Dr. Eggman. Yes, these are the 5 staple characters in the Sonic series, and of course Sonic is going to have his supersonic ability, so it only makes sense to have these 5 characters lead off the roster for this game. But this 6th character is an interesting one. I'm not sure if any of you guys know it. If you guys are Sonic fans, you might, but this is the Chowl, and it is actually a group of 3 or 4 characters. These characters debuted in the Team Sonic racing game that came out in 2019, and there's like 3 or 4 of them. There's like your neutral Chow, the dark Chow, the hero Chow. There's like a lot of Chows, and I think they can all make sense to fit in a cart and enter in a Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing game. Next up, we basically got your dream team. We're rocking Silver, Blaze, and Vector the Crocodile. Nothing new to see here. These guys are pretty much staples. I think Silver and Blaze debuted in Zero Gravity Sonic Riders, whereas Vector made his debut in Sonic Free Riders of all games. So they have some experience in both the Sonic Riders games and the Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing games. So get them back into the 3rd game in the trilogy. Let's make it happen. Next on the roster, Cream the Rabbit. I didn't know much about this character until this character debuted in Sonic Riders, the original on the GameCube. I thought it was such an unexpected character, a pretty cool character, so I'm going along with it. Add her into the roster. Underneath Dr. Eggman, you know I gotta add the man, the myth, the legend, Shadow the Hedgehog. I think it only makes sense to add Shadow. If you're adding Sonic and Silver, you gotta throw in Shadow in there. Just get the whole Sonic gang complete, and Shadow is a cult classic character. A lot of fans love him. I really like Shadow. I think he looks amazing with his design, and add him into the game. Another character that was most recently playable in Team Sonic Racing is Big the Cat. Now, this character doesn't get a lot of opportunities to be playable in a Sonic racing game, but I think bringing him back in a 3rd game for the Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing game could be fantastic. It's a massive character, probably the biggest character on this roster, with the exception of maybe a couple like Dr. Eggman and a few more. But Big the Cat is, well, he's massive, and I think he can make a fun heavyweight to have on your roster. Next up, keeping all the Sonics on the left, we got Metal Sonic, of course. This character actually debuted in Sonic R. That was a Sonic game where you actually raced on your feet. I never played it myself, but it looked pretty darn cool, and I think Metal Sonic is a fantastic companion to Sonic, like his arch rival nemesis. So bring him back to the game. Let's get this into the trilogy. Now, 2 characters that were exclusive to Sonic R, but I think can make great comebacks into the Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing games with new designs is the Tails doll and Metal Knuckles. These characters, like I mentioned, were originally in Sonic R as playable characters, which I found amazing. Even though I still never got to play the game, I think it's great that these characters even exist. And just to be like a companion, a whole Metal Squad with Metal Sonic to combat with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, I think it's brilliant. Yes, you guys might not like these quote-unquote clone characters, but I personally do. I think their designs look fantastic. You can give them different stats, make them a little bit heavier or lighter in the Tails doll case, and let's just make things happen. This is pretty solid, and I like both of these characters just based on design alone. Next up, you got Rouge the Bat. Honestly, a pretty staple Sonic racing character at this point. Debuted in Sonic Riders. That's when I first heard about her, and looking good as always. I think Rouge the Bat is pretty much a Sonic staple, so you might as well just keep her around. Seems to be a fan favorite, and yeah, let's just keep her in this trilogy. But a character that has not necessarily been a staple is the Egg Robo, or the Eggman Robo, whatever you want to call it. This was also a playable character in Sonic R and has not necessarily been a playable character since. Has since been replaced by like your E10000Gs or your SCRHDs, your random Eggman robots, but I want to keep the classic Eggman boss robot, bring him into the roster just as another companion to Dr. Eggman, and I think it works out just fine. That's not going to be the only robot we are bringing into the game, because right next to it we have E123 Omega to complete the Team Dark. You got Shadow, Rouge, and now Omega, filing out that entire trilogy of characters. You gotta love it to complete the trilogy of the Sega All-Stars racing game. Now next, we got 2 rows of characters that are not necessarily Sonic characters, but are from the Sega franchise or from franchises that are owned / published by Sega. Starting off with Super Monkey Ball's II. You already know how it is. My man II, he is the GOAT. I predicted him for Smash Bros, and I love the Super Monkey Ball games. I predicted DLC for the Banana Mania game like 2 years ago, so it makes sense to me that II should be in the game. II also was in Sonic Riders and in the Sonic and Sega All-Stars racing games. He is like the perfect Sega mascot besides Sonic, so bring II into the game. And of course, you got Knights and Ooh La La from Space Channel 5. The reason I bring these two up together is because these three characters actually, along with II, were the three special guest characters that appeared in the original Sonic Riders in the GameCube and Xbox, original and all that era. That was my favorite Sonic racing game, still is my favorite Sonic racing game, and those were the three special guest characters from Sega then, and I think they make perfect sense to include in an All-Stars racing game, as most of them have appeared in both of the All-Star racing games. Add them in there. The rest of this row is looking kind of whack, and starting off, we have, oh man, Red from Angry Birds. Now you're thinking, how on earth does Angry Birds fit in a Sega All-Stars racing? Well, that's just the thing. The developers for Angry Birds, Rovio Entertainment, is actually published by Sega, and Sega owns that company pretty much, so it makes sense to throw in Red from Angry Birds, or just any Angry Birds in general, since, they are from a company that is owned by Sega. Thus, Angry Birds is Sega. Makes sense to me. Throw them in there. Next up, you got that classic Oppa from Fantasy Zone. Now, this character was only playable in the original Sonic Sega All-Stars Racing, not in Transformed as far as I can tell, and it was also actually an Extreme Gearboard in the original Sonic Riders, so this character has a lot of history with it, and I just love how unique the character looks. It just looks insane. It looks like a cart, a duck, and a bird all at the same time, like a submarine. I don't know. It looks fantastic. I don't know what it's supposed to be. It looks cool to me, and I'm down for things that look cool. Throw it in the roster. Next up is a character I'm sure nobody is expecting, but I'm going to throw him in there anyway. This is Echo the Dolphin. Yeah, this character hasn't had a game in its main series in over 20 years, but you know what? I'm saying screw all of that history. Bring Echo the Dolphin back. Show the world what kind of an awesome character you were before. Maybe, just maybe, we can get a new Echo the Dolphin game. Have I ever played the Echo the Dolphin games? I absolutely have not, but I think the character looks kind of cool, and who wouldn't want to race as a dolphin with Sonic against Sonic in All-Stars Racing 3? Next up, your final row of this dream roster, and it's a row full of guest characters. Of course, starting things off is Amigo. We got to have another monkey character in there as well, just to make that first column look nice and uniform. You got the three Sonics and then II and Amigo, the two monkeys filling it out. Amigo actually was playable in Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, and also had a stage in the original Sonic Riders, the Sega Carnival. Had, some Amigo, Samba de Amigo references. A lot of good things coming for Amigo, and has been playable in the previous Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing games, so let's throw this character in there. Next up, you got Beat from Jet Set Radio and BD Joe from Crazy Taxi. Two human characters that have been playable in both Sega All-Stars Racing games, so it only makes sense for me, as the mascots of their main games, to throw them into the third edition of the Sega All-Stars Racing series, because, you gotta have some of the best Sega franchises being recognized, like Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi. These are the main men for their respective series. They've been playable in the games before. Let's throw them into this roster. It only makes sense to me. I wouldn't mind them in there. These last three characters are very, very interesting. Kicking things off is Morgana, and I think Morgana is a pretty fun character. I predicted Morgana in my Super Monkey Ball prediction video as well from over 2 years ago, but Morgana I think makes a lot of sense. Atlas Entertainment is owned and published by Sega. Not sure about owned, but definitely published by Sega. They published Persona 5 through Sega, so I feel like they would have the rights to include Morgana, or at least any representative from the Persona games, into the All-Stars Racing series, the third edition of Sega's All-Stars Racing. I'm about that life. Bring Morgana, or just any representation. I was thinking Joker, but I think Morgana makes a better fit, so let's throw her in there. Next up, in that same sort of vein, we got Bayonetta, because Platinum Games has published their games through Sega. Just like Atlas did with their Persona series, Platinum Games with the Bayonetta series have submitted and published the games through Sega. Therefore, I feel like Sega has the rights to Bayonetta and can use Bayonetta in whatever games they want when it's crossover like this. That's the beauty of these crossover style games. Sega can take any licenses and games that they've had publishing rights to and throw their main characters in there. Bayonetta is not the exception. I think Bayonetta fits that bill perfectly. It would be incredible to have among this massive cast of characters. Let's put Bayonetta, an insane Umber Witch character, in the All-Stars Racing Volume 3. And last but not least, keeping the console tradition alive, because Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania had consoles as playable characters, I'm gonna have a console as a playable character. I'm putting in the Sega Genesis. In Monkey Ball Banana Mania, the Dreamcast, the Saturn, and the Game Gear are all playable characters, so I wanted to give the Genesis some love. It is the console that birthed the original Sonic the Hedgehog games, and they still hold up today, so you gotta give some love and respect to the original console from Sega. Put the Genesis in the All-Stars Racing cast. Let's see a console try to race a kart. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it. This is my roster for if Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing had a third game and I had to limit the roster to 30 characters, these are who I would pick. 18 Sonic characters in the last 2 rows. The last 12 characters are guest, not necessarily third party, but Sega characters or consoles at this rate that I think could be fun playable characters. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you are new. I want to give a massive shout out to all of my members. Thank you so much for your incredible support. I really do appreciate you all, and thank you all. I hope you're enjoying your time being a Wall Star or Wall of Gold member. You guys make my entire time on YouTube so much better. So thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. Stay all pro. Subscribe if you are new, and I am out of here.